Last one before the weekend, and that is it. Live streaming live. Delta reading, modified Murph, bought some newspapers, lockdowns affecting many. And yes, the more I read for this Delta, the more I'm seeing in my own failures in studying Mandarin Chinese. Boom, folks, Friday, October 14th, 2022. I'm Steven Sersky. This here is my daily audio yik yak, in which I talk about some of the things that are going on here in Beijing and some of the things that keep me busy while not being locked down. It's kind of interesting because I know in a few years' time, hopefully, maybe, don't know, when I look back at some of these episodes, especially if I've managed to keep on top of documenting them, posting them on my website, not just Spotify and Apple and those places, but also my own website, because that way I'll keep the MP3 files and everything well organized. What I know there are going to be criticisms about things that I've either said or some of the things that I didn't say in regard to whatever was happening at that time. The one thing I can say in my defense is that if I was in another part of the world, be it Canada, the United States maybe, but part of Europe, part of Africa, Australia, not too sure. But there are topics that in that society, in that community, that would sort of be seen as things that you don't talk about, things that you shouldn't talk about, and things that if you did talk about them, you should expect some sort of reaction. And that's what I sort of approach this daily audio blog with that in mind, sort of thing. The big podcast as well, which I'll talk about that in a minute. But so if you're wondering at all why I don't delve into any sort of like, well, what about this? Why am I not being more of an investigative reporter? I saw an interesting tweet on Twitter the other day that some guy was ragging on ESL teachers, going, listen, if you're an ESL teacher, you don't know anything about China. You don't know anything about wherever you're living. You're just an English teacher. The problem, and this one guy I follow responded, is like, you mean like you're party parroting like that? That's you're just parroting whatever you're not parodying, but parroting, repeating whatever it is you've been told to say. I mean, anyone who claims to know anything special or unique about China, I think is kind of full of shit, to tell you the truth. Because if they do, they wouldn't say it. And if they did say it, then it's either not true or you don't want to be around them for very much longer. Like it's almost like that sort of deduction. That being the case, there are people who look at some numbers, and I sort of think of the financial people who do this sort of thing. And this is what I sort of admire about the financial industry as a whole, especially the good people, like the good traders, the good investors, the good money managers, the good stock market watchers and analysts, the people who look at the hard numbers and go, okay, if this, then that. Like if China shuts down, its economy shut down, if OPEC is cutting, if Russia isn't selling its oil, and the United States can't sell its oil, or the US has so much oil on its own, what does that mean for Canadian oil? Like that sort of deduction. I mean, I bring this up because it is an argument that's being made right now in favor of buying Canadian energy stocks, but that's just one of them, right? So there's any number. The idea being that if you take a look at the numbers, the inventory, the supply, the demand, not projected so much, but like the real numbers that are happening right now and what has happened before in the past. Not that the past is always a predictor of future gains. I mean, this is a very common saying and disclaimer in the financial markets and financial world. The idea being that you have to take a look at what's happened before, typically at this time of year, because there are certain contracts that come due, right? One interesting tidbit that I just learned today, after all my years of following the markets, this is sort of the bad thing about being an outsider, and it kind of makes me want to either take a more specialist course, although I'm not sure if anybody offers this stuff. This is like street knowledge that it's either street knowledge that you're in the bar, you're talking to someone about it, or you're in the game and you have to do it, and that's why you know these things happens. These things happen, and I'm speaking about the fiscal end of year for mutual funds is October 31st. So there's this very famous trade that happens in the stock market. It's called well, not just the dogs at the Dow, where you buy the beaten up stocks in the Dow Jones indices, but it's tax loss selling. And it might be, this typically happens, it's most noticeable in December. But December is typically the retail investor dumping their stocks. Why does the market go down in October, which is a typically, historically, seasonally terrible month for the markets? It's because the mutual funds have an end of year, end of fiscal year, October 31st. And why does that matter? Because the tax law, both in Canada, United States, I think this is even in the UK, any major developed trading market will have a 30-day wash sale. And what that means is that if you sell a stock on October 1st and you buy it again on October 15th, if you have lost money on that trade, so you held it up until October 1st, you're losing money, you're going, oh, that's it, I'm done. Sell the thing. But then October 15th, you see it's going up again, you buy it again so it's 15 days later after you sold it, you cannot claim those losses from the initial purchase against any future gains. Think about how that works. Okay, that's your wash sale. Basically, if you're losing money, and this doesn't really apply to making money. If you're getting a profit, they don't care. They're going to tax you anyway. But if you're losing money on a stock and you sell it, let's go day one. If you're being if you're being financially tax safe, tax wise, you cannot purchase that stock until day 31, because then you can claim, usually it's 50% losses on that loss of the initial investment. So day one, you sell it, you wait 30 days, and you buy it back. You look at the dip in the market. Well, stock market going down to September, also a very bad month. Isn't there a federal fiscal end of year there somewhere too, for the United States? Pretty sure there is.